Colin went through a French Winawer game last week, so I thought I'd just go through one or two French Winawer games that I played as well. I think it's an interesting opening in the sense that you get unbalanced positions. I wasn't going to go too deeply into the theory, partly because I've forgotten most of it, and partly I think the middle games are more interesting. So I'm just going to go over one or two of my games. If you want to ask any questions along the way, please do. And I'll get straight into it. Now, let's try, I'll start with this one. As John almost said in the introduction.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. I'll be talking about the French defence Winawer variation. What is the French defence Winawer variation? If you're not familiar with it, it's the variation of the French which is reached after this move, bishop to b4. As I've said, I've found it does lead to interesting and unbalanced positions, and that's why I play it. Black does have alternatives, of course, as you'd expect this early in the game. This is played a lot, the classical French, and this is played perhaps less often. This tends to lead to positions where Black's trying to equalise rather than to make a fighting game of it, in my opinion. Anyway, the Winawer. And White's got a lot of alternatives at this point. The most common one is to grab space with e4 to e5, and excuse me, I didn't mean to play. And try and make force Black to exchange on c3, and White gets the two bishops. But first we'll go into a slight sideline. Well, it does start with e5. Black nibbles away.
Can I just ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
When I think it's probably fair to say, well, in reply to knight c3, the winner was the main line against knight c3. When did that sort of take over from the classical as being, seen as the best move?
Oh,
knight c3. When did Winawer?
It's not the main line
from.
I'm not sure it is the main move. I think at grandmaster chess level, the classical is probably more common. I think they tend to mistrust the Winawer. I think in club chess it might be a different story. But the Winawer is still played at the top level. I did a quick search out of interest. In the past 2 or 3 years, almost all of the top players have played it. Carlsen's played it, Caruana's played it, Nepo's played it, Wesley So's played it. Admittedly more at fast time controls and classical, but certainly Nepo's played it in classical as a fair amount. I don't know. Let's have a look at a typical position from the classical French. It goes something like this. And I've never played this. So you get this sort of very typical French position, really, where Black's gradually going to develop and gradually try to untangle his pieces and nibble away at White's centre after his castle, probably. But White can get up a bit of an attack. It's totally playable. I think some club players do play it, Steve. But I'm not sure if I agree that the Winawer is more popular than the classical.
Oh, right.
But do you play e4, don't you, Steve?
I play all sorts of things.
Okay. I mean, is that
prepared against all of them?
Okay. I mean, I was asking, is that your experience that it's more common?
No, not really. It's just my, just my perception, which was maybe dates back 20, 30 years when I used to read more chess books. I got
possibly.
At grandmaster level, the Winawer was more prevalent than the classical. But I'm maybe thinking back to the sort of 70s and 80s.
It quite possibly was.
It's maybe the classicals come back into fashion.
Would it be fair to say that Wolfgang Ullmann helped to popularise the Winawer.
Yeah, I think it would be very fair.
Unfortunately, at the highest level, and Karpov switched to the Tarash, which has put a lot of things out of business.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, I was looking at my own games, and I found that out of about 150 French defences that I've trotted out, 47 were French Winawers.
I'm amazed. You must play much stronger players than me.
About a third of them. But sorry, James. Yeah.
Well, no,
but,
no. I mean, I'm a lifelong Frenchman, and the exchange variation at Dickhead's level, and also the advanced variation, is very, very popular online. I just get it all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, what I was going to say was a lot of my games, including the ones I'm going to show tonight mainly, were from, say, the 90s and early 2000s, where as black, I could expect to see 3 knight c3 or 3 knight d2, say in equal proportion, but those were by far the most common moves. Whereas recently, I'm getting knight c3, knight d2, the advanced variation and the exchange variation. You know, the advance and the exchange have become a lot more popular than they were in recent years, I would say, at club level.
I think it's just a question of not wanting to move a piece. I genuinely believe that the exchange variation and the advance is because people are just holding back.
And sharp theory as well, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, agreed.
Sorry, Colin, this might be just an indulgent comment of mine, but you said early 80s, and I just looked a little record book. I played the Winawer once, 1982, and I used to play it then. And on this particular day, I was playing the Winawer. I was board something like 20 for Merseyside.
Okay.
And the way the boards were arranged, I was seated next to the board 1, if that makes sense. And on the board 1, for either Greater Manchester or something, was Nigel Short. And Nigel Short was playing the Winawer as well. And Nigel Short was standing next to my game at about move 13 with a puzzled look on his face, wondering how I'd made it go all wrong when his was going all right. So Nigel Short has definitely played it, I can confirm. But anyway, sorry about that.
That would have been a much better story if Nigel Short had been scratching his head working out why his had gone wrong and he hadn't done as well as you.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say he was waiting for your move, so you could copy them.
I should have copied him, shouldn't I? But there you go.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, okay, back to the game. This game was a game between myself and Mr. E. White, Michael White, I think. As you can see, he played in the Exmouth Open in 2000. So he did continue, let us say, normally to begin with. Then he played this. Pretty much a sideline. In my opinion, it's a very good sideline from the White point of view. I think it gives White real chances of getting an advantage, fairly risk-free without knowing a ton of theory. Anyway, so I thought, let's move my knight out and try and get it to f5. Oops, that didn't happen. And pressurise the d4 pawn. Now the bishop's moved. Well, bishop takes knight probably wasn't a great idea anyway, but now the bishop's moved once, it's even less of a great idea. So I thought, well, why not put it to 8-6? And
that's the question that others must be thinking. Why don't you play c takes d?
c takes d, good question.
Knight b5, isn't it?
Knight b5. It's still more, and it's going to be quite hard to, well, you can't keep the pawn, put it like that. If you say swap off the bishops, you're going to have to reckon with the knight d6 check, which you probably can live with, but not ideal. And you are going to lose the pawn back. And if you just move the bishop back, let's say there, again, White can just take the pawn and proceed. You can play knight f3 first, even. Right. Maybe even queen g4 first to force a pawn weakness or get your king to the funny square. So anyway, so there are alternatives. I played knight h6. and white immediately challenged my bishop. This was a new variation to me at the time. I kind of knew a little bit about it, but hadn't really looked at it. And what I should have done was play something like bishop takes knight, bishop takes bishop, and gradually develop with b6 and knight c6 and so on. Play bishop a6 if I'm given a chance to. But you know, I think it's probably still fair to say that white retains a little bit of an edge there. Anyway, I didn't really know what I was doing, so I decided to take on d4. Not a very good move, not a blunder, but not a great move. He took the bishop, I took the knight, and he took the pawn. And now, what is it? It's equal material still, isn't it? It's quite hard for black to develop sensibly, to be honest. As soon as the knight comes to c6, he's going to go b5 and kick it away, and it's got to retreat somewhere. And also, it's going to be a lot harder for him to get the normal frame break of f6 in, because this bishop is on a really good diagonal now. So, not a great opening success for black so far. Anyway, I'm castled. And I think here white should just continue developing normally with a move like knight f3 and get castled, and you know, he's doing pretty well. But my opponent came up with this idea, queen h5. He probably realised that what I played wasn't correct and wanted to punish it. I'm not totally sure what his thoughts were. It could be.
Is he going to go bishop d3 and bishop d2 or something?
That's possible, John. That's entirely possible. It could be aggressive intent, as you said, with bishop d3 and bishop d2, and then he really is threatening. I did wonder if it's also a defensive move aimed against black doing this or this.
Yeah.
If black tries that, obviously take it, and suddenly you can't take the pawn because the knight's hanging if you take with the pawn, and you lose material otherwise. But it does give me a chance. And the chance to play d4. I kind of reason that if I play grovelly moves like knight c6 and allow him to play b5 and knight c7, bishop d7, I'm never going to get any sort of game. So I lashed out, as it were, with d4. And I think white's most sensible option here is simply to play bishop d2. But you know, white's obviously got a game with knight f5, and the d4 pawn's quite strong. But he played rook d1, winning the pawn and attacking it, obviously, and I defended it. Oh, excuse me.
Knight f3 now.
Knight f3 looks completely natural. I'm trying to wonder why he didn't play it. Knight f3. What did he play? He played b5, trying to force the issue, which I think is a mistake. So yeah, what's wrong with knight f3? Everybody. Good question.
Well,
I think queen c7 actually.
Yeah.
Does that actually work though?
Well, the queen's defending e5.
The queen's defending e5. I'm on it twice, and I might have an extra attack on c2. If he takes with the knight, for example, I can take the e-pawn with check and swap queens off if necessary. If he takes with the bishop, I can take the b-pawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe queen c7 is a good response, really. So, but possibly that's why he tried to force it immediately with b5. But I am hitting his bishop. If I move the knight away, obviously it's really bad for me. He just takes the pawn and he's pawn up with a great position. So I play queen c7 anyway. And he's got to either trade knights and bishops or retreat his bishop, which he chooses to do. And I took the e-pawn. So let's take stock. Black's actually a pawn up.
I'm curious why you took with the knight there rather than the queen.
That's an interesting question. If I take with the queen,
Are you don't like knight 8, bishop h6 afterwards? Is that
that's right. During the game, it's a long time ago, Tom, so I can't remember all my thoughts. I think I was nervous about this as an ending.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks good for black, doesn't it? I can't develop this piece immediately for a start because he'll just boot the bishop.
Go f4, won't he?
Just go f4 and boot the knight away.
Yeah.
So, rightly or wrongly, I'll probably assume that this ending is just bad for me. Maybe I've got time to slowly develop with b6, bishop b7, and rook d8. I don't know. Why it's not exactly a model of development either.
Yeah, he's got a bit of an initiative here.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I'll do it with the knight.
Yeah.
And he decided to wreck my pawn structure.
How rude.
It was a bit, and develop his pieces. So black's a pawn up. This pawn doesn't look long for the world. And if he gets queen takes pawn and knight g5 in, then obviously he's got a really dangerous initiative. And possibly he can play bishop d3 and get the rook on the third rank if need be. So after some thought, I flicked in a check. So sorry, just checking here.
What about queen takes c2?
Queen takes c2 instead of the check.
Hmm.
Good question.
Oh, he takes the knight.
He takes the knight. Yeah, the knight's on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got to check. Yeah.
Yeah, he is actually threatening the knight. If
Yeah.
I take the knight, I assume he's going to take back the pawn. Is that safe? It looks really dangerous. And then his rook's coming on the g file.
Mm.
He's going to take that pawn, and his bishop's coming there. I might be able to hold that with f5, but I don't know. It looks really,
Flaky.
yeah, bad, I think. So I saw this line with queen a5 check, and it doesn't look right, but it almost looks as if black's got a bit of an attack. Yeah, how does white get out of the check? It would be the question.
b4.
Yes.
Sorry.
Beef.
Oh,
Oh, no,
b4.
yeah, I was thinking, no, it doesn't work because c3 is taking the check.
Yeah.
I was going to sack the b pawn and lull the queen away, but it doesn't work.
He has got rook d2, but I think that after queen a1 check, well, that I can't believe you can go to king to e2. I mean, the knight just retreats and it looks pretty horrible. Rook there. I suspect that both players have got to take a repetition. Maybe white can be a bit, well, maybe either side can be a bit more ambitious, and maybe black can get away with this. Oh no, I can't. So sorry, because the knight's still hanging. And again, I don't think I can ever take on f3 because of the opening of the g file. So that kind of looks a bit like a draw, to be honest. I didn't really see if black had any. Sorry, I'm hitting the wrong button. I'm trying to go back. If black had any better moves after here, maybe black can keep the game going with knight g3. But I think white's better after queen takes pawn. Not sure. So it's a slightly weird position.
Queen's a bit offside on the a file, isn't it? Really.
But
The black queen's a bit offside on the a file. You need to be there on the king side, really.
Or for defensive purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But maybe black is a pawn up, so maybe I can do something along these lines. It looks a little bit hairy though.
Yeah, you've now got the queen coming.
The bishop might be coming. I don't know. It might be playable. It's a sort of I don't know, difficult position to get your head around in some ways. Anyway, white thought that he was probably better and played knight d2. I think the position is actually is equal at this point, and I continued with f5. Why did I do that? I wonder. It allows me to defend along the second rank, basically.
If you don't know, I don't know who would really.
It was a long time ago, James. I'm trying to remember. Seemed a good idea at the time, is the obvious answer.
Right.
Are you going to put your bishop on E8?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Is that the idea of F5? So you can play bishop D7, bishop E8. Bishop D6.
That is certainly one idea. And this is quite an unusual position, I think, for a French Winawer, but it's a very common theme in a lot of French defensive is this manoeuvre that John mentioned, the bishop to D7 to E8, which is both a defensive manoeuvre and it activates the bishop, obviously. So, bishop D7 indeed. And he decided to move the queen back and hit the knight. That goes back. Sorry, yeah, White's regaining the pawn here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In fact, he's even winning a pawn. But Black's almost completed his development, and he wins the pawn back immediately.
Is that sound? You can take that pawn, can you? Okay. Yeah.
I get into a bit of a tangle.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
To be completely honest. Looking at the position now, the most natural move to me seems rook.
Yeah.
Rook to D8. I'm not sure which rook.
I'd have to calculate that properly before I took on B5.
Yeah, no, I think you've got a very good point. I am a pawn down, it must be said.
Yeah.
Bishop takes pawn looks wrong for a number of reasons, really.
Well, Queen C5.
Queen C5.
But and Knight C4 maybe. I suppose you've got to go A6, have you, or something like that?
Probably.
C5 or B6.
Well, let's have a look. I didn't look at Queen C5, to be honest. He played B4, which is a good move, actually.
Yeah.
Let's say Queen C5. What can Black do?
B6.
Well, Queen takes bishop.
Well, that loses a piece. So
Oh,
you've got to go,
sorry. I'm sorry, of course. Yeah.
Got to go A6, haven't you?
Yes.
A6, haven't you?
Yeah, it looks like. I'm just sorry. I'm just checking that is actually the only move.
Well, and then I'm thinking Knight C. It's pinned.
Knight's pinned. Knight is pinned.
C4.
Okay, sorry.
So he does have B4, but my queen can go to A4.
All right, but let's go C4 then.
You've got C4.
C4, that's what I am.
Explosive move.
It is an explosive move. So I suppose you think that's good, don't you?
Well, you've got B6.
I've got B6. I think I can also move a rook to C8.
Yeah.
And you can't maintain the pin.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, that's even here. I wouldn't swear that Black's 100% comfortable, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what White played was also quite logical.
Yeah, that looks sensible.
Yeah, so the queen's got to move to the square, which defends his bishop. Bishop, it goes there, and now C4. So White's playing quite energetically, really, exploiting this funny position of the queen.
Rook. No, that doesn't work, does it? Rook A D8 loses a piece. Yeah.
Yeah, to pawn takes bishop.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
So what did I do?
And E5 for the same reason is no good.
Yes, indeed, E5 to pawn takes.
Oh well, Queen D5 check and then takes.
yeah, indeed, even clearer.
Even.
So yeah, I've got to move the bishop basically. Bishop C6, B5.
Yes.
Looks pretty awful for Black. So
Should be E8.
Bishop E8. I went to A4. I think I'd seen.
Can he pin with a rook now then?
Well, exactly. So I'm gaining a tempo on the rook.
You're
Actually, yeah, but
cruising for a bruising here, Colin.
I know. It doesn't look great, does it? You know, even if the bishop retreats, you can play rook A1, and the queen goes somewhere.
Chase, yeah.
You know, and then you can chase it about. You know, with one of the pawns, and then put a knight there, or with the other pawn. You know, White's just gaining space and losing no time. So anyway, bishop a4. I did mention that the quality of these games might not be tremendous, I hope. He plays c5, hitting the queen.
What was the time limit then, Colin?
Oh, it was a
Classical,
tournament.
Yeah.
It was over a long weekend. I think it was 2 games a day. So it'll be I can't remember, and unfortunately I don't record it, but it might have been something like 36 in an hour and a half and a quarter.
Right.
Quick finish. It was a long play game. It was probably a little slower than that, but I can't remember. Yeah. So sorry about that. So he's hitting my queen. Queen goes to c6. Rook b1. Threatening b5. Hitting the queen and the bishop. So he's
corralling the bishop.
Corralling the bishop, yeah. I thought it was knights that was supposed to be corralled, not bishops. So rook d8, rook fd8, hitting the queen, and he played there.
Can I ask why you chose that rook instead of the other one?
You can ask.
No, you can't.
But you can certainly ask.
But it's the universal question, isn't it? And you will,
Yeah.
Hang in now if you think you know the answer.
Yeah.
I would guess that I felt the rook might do something useful on the c file after b6 or a5 or a6 or
Well,
something.
yeah, maybe a5 at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, you've still got b5.
That does leave you with a really awful b pawn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, no, I was just wondering what you had.
He's also got queen f6 as a move here, but it probably doesn't do him any good. Anyway, he went queen b2.
Yeah.
He should have played queen c3 when the position is pretty equal, to be honest. He's going to develop and...
well, queen b2 doesn't threaten b5, does it? Because the c pawn hangs.
Good point. Yeah, good point.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, what did and should, in fact, Black play here? So think about it for a minute before giving your answers. Let everybody have a go.
Wow.
Got to say, rook takes knight is looking interesting.
Okay, that is the correct answer. So rook takes knight, and if white takes with the queen, what do you do?
Well, we go queen e4 check. Queen e4 check.
Queen e4 check, and we just pick up the rook on b1.
I'm loving it.
Loose pieces drop off.
Indeed. And if he takes with the king, which in fact happened in the game.
Resign now. Wait.
Well, rook d8 maybe. I don't know.
Rook d8 check.
Rook d8 check, definitely.
Develop the pieces.
Yeah, you can't move the bishop in the way because you can just keep attacking it with bishop b5 probably to stop that pawn advancing.
Yeah.
And it's lost. Knight f4 isn't possible as well. So he has to move the king. Not if the king. Anyway, he went king c3. I think that's more or less forced. I don't think, well, king c3 or king c1. If he goes back to e1, I'm guessing that queen e4 check is crushing.
Looks strong.
Again, if bishop e2, you've got knight f4. You're threatening to come in there and there. And you're hitting the rook. And I think black's crashing through here. So you went king c3.
So white's busted here.
White's totally busted. It's dead lost now.
Yeah.
And queen d5 was played. And
with some alacrity, no doubt.
With huge alacrity.
Yeah.
And white doesn't have a defense here. Is queen d4.
Well, that's a bit strong.
And mate, yeah. So it just, I can hardly claim to have outplayed my opponent by any means. It just, I mean, you can talk about white being behind the development and all of this kind of stuff, but in reality, he had a fine game until quite close to the end.
Yeah, who said that? Tartakova?
So Colin, what
I think he did spend too much time on the queen side, really.
Yeah, probably. If you just played Bishop E2 at some point in castle,
Yeah.
I think it'd have been a little better.
Yeah.
If his safeties is king, he could have carried on with that queen side play anyway.
Yes, he could.
So I think it was
Colin,
just,
could he not have castled long instead of playing rook d1?
He could, and that was a better version of the same idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
puts his king a bit more into safety.
yeah, he could. Yeah. Can we just look at that position in a tick?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that. In this position, queen there was a better move, and you might think, well, why? What's the difference? And which is exactly what I thought until I put it on the computer earlier today. Because this time, rook takes knight, king takes rook, check, king c1, queen there, and he can escape. Yeah, you can escape, because with the queen on b2, we could have had this position. There's no real way out of the maze as far as I can see.
Better coordination.
Yeah. So, yeah, but going back to where he played rook d1. Hasn't he played rook d1 yet? Okay, rook d1 here. As I said, probably best is simply to retreat and develop normally with a pleasant position.
yeah.
If he is going to play the rook d1 idea, it is actually best to do this because after this, pawn there, queen there. How did the game go? I can't remember. He moved the bishop back, didn't he? Knight takes pawn, bishop takes knight, pawn takes, say queen takes pawn, they didn't play that in the game. I don't have a check. And if I do this, you can just go there and he's quite safe. So, yeah. Anyway, a bit of randomness to start off with.
Yeah.
That's good fun.
Yeah, so he missed rook d2.
He must have missed rook d2, yeah.
Or even rook takes d2.
Yeah.
Indeed. Takes queen knight, yeah. Yeah, okay then. I'll move on. Yeah, this was a funny tournament for me, actually. As I say, I don't think I'd had that variation played against me before, though I've had it played a few times against me subsequently. People kept on playing odd openings against me in that tournament. It was it was in that tournament that, or before the tournament, obviously, that I decided to switch from playing 1e4 to 1d4 as a white player. I was always a pawn to king 4 guy, and I decided to change the pawn to queen 4. So I was booking up all of these queen's gambits and Nimzos and Grunfelds and king's Indians. And then the first 2 games I got with 1d4, the first one was an England gambit. So
That would teach you.
yeah, so from the right side, which I hadn't even bothered looking at, obviously, and I drew that game actually. I didn't play it terribly, but I didn't play it particularly well.
Who played that then?
Oh,
Was it Jonathan
sorry.
Beadle?
Oh, I'd have to look that up, to be honest.
Okay.
I'd have to look. I can't remember. Yeah, it's a decent player. And the second game was a Budapest, which is certainly a bit more mainstream, but again, not one I'd looked at. So maybe it was just a tournament for people finding openings I wasn't that familiar with.
Well,
Yeah.
that's isn't it? Come on.
Yeah, okay. If I may, the next game is probably a bit more mainstream, and it is the game that I played against Jim State. So, hi Jim, if you're listening to the recording, which Steve said he might be doing, and I hope you don't mind me showing this game. I was hoping that he would have input to it, as I said earlier. And let's get that up. There it is. This was played even longer time ago, 25 years ago, when I was playing for Bracknell. And in this game, we both went down what you could call a mainline Winawer. So again, the opening 3 moves, and here.
Were they called the Met Office then, Colin?
No, they were all separate clubs, John.
Okay.
Clubs. Yeah, there was a Met Office club and an ICL club as well, all in Bracknell.
Yeah. Okay.
Those days, yeah, I think most works play teams seem to have disappeared outside London anyway.
Mm.
So White kind of asked the bishop, and most people play bishop takes knight check. I've experimented with bishop a5, but not that successfully. White develops his knight. White's got alternatives here. You can either, broadly speaking, he can play positional moves, such as a4, intending to get the bishop out, knight f3, just developing, even h4, followed by h5 and h6 is a good system, or the sort of slightly mad queen g4 line, which is what Jim did. This, in fact, because he threatens to take this pawn here, it used to be called the poison pawn variation, might still be, but there's a line in the Sicilian defense where that's most commonly applied to now. Anyway, Black can defend the pawn with moves like king f8 or knight f5. Those lines aren't very popular and possibly not very good. So White, or rather Black, just gives up a pawn.
Can you play knight g6?
Sorry?
Knight g6, is that possible?
Here.
Like G6.
G6.
Oh, knight g6, yes, sorry, I beg your pardon. Yes, that is a move as well. Yeah, it is. I have to say I don't know anything about, or hardly anything about those lines, because, you know, I've always played the lines where you give up the pawn. Black's also got, the big move I've forgotten to mention is castles.
Yeah, you can castle.
You can absolutely castle here. And for a long time, nobody did, or virtually nobody did. And then it sort of seemed to dawn on people that it was playable. White does get an attack. It's quite theoretical, but there is a part of me that suspects that it's probably objectively the best move, and that giving up the pawn might not be totally correct. But
so would it be bishop h6 and then knight g6?
Yeah, bishop h6 can be met by knight g6 or even knight f5, because you're defending g7 and hitting the bishop. I think it's a long time since I looked at it. What put me off it was there seemed to be 1 or 2 lines where Black would be well advised to take a repetition if White offered it. Yeah, I think White can, force is probably a strong word, but oblige Black to take a repetition if White's only playing for a draw. But you know, in any case, queen c7 is what I've been playing. Jim takes the pawn, totally main line, takes the other pawn, and Black takes a pawn in the centre. So I'm just checking. The question for Magnus. Sorry, just speak on you because I'm nasty. Can you tell me why White can't just recapture the pawn in that position? Probably too easy.
Just child botphonate, except not.
Piece blindness.
Hello, Magnus. Is your mic on?
Oh, yes, sorry. I said queen c3.
Queen c3, yeah, sorry to ask. So White's won 2 pawns, and Black's come 1 pawn back, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, rather 6 against 7 at the moment. White's still a pawn up. So obviously queen c3 check is a threat anyway. So White defends it. And you might think that Black can take the pawn. I think it's borderline playable, but White gets a lot of play after bishop f4, so nobody plays it. So now White is threatening to take the pawn back, straighten out his pawn structure, and everything's good. So Black develops his knight. So this is all very main line, and it depends on this tactic. So if white tries pawn takes pawn now, black's got this tactic, and if knight takes knight, queen c3 check. So white can't just blithely take the pawn back. Black really is threatening this pawn now, so white defends it. These moves are by far the most commonly played in this position. And they're not all forced, but they're not far from it somehow. Black develops.
Knight f5.
And sorry, what in this position?
Yeah, is that playable?
Good question.
Like a few threats.
The rook's hanging.
Oh, the rook's hanging.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out.
All right. No, I was going to pause the video.
Okay. So that develops. White brings the queen back to, well, defend the pawn and probably stop tactics like knight f5 in the future. And black takes the pawn. So this position is a very standard, very common position in the French Winawer in this sharp queen g4 line. So white's certainly going to regain this pawn, if not this move at some point in the future, and remain a pawn up. White's got two bishops. White's got an outside pass pawn. And also this bishop isn't very great. And some people who don't play the French Winawer, and possibly anybody, might say, well, what you know, why is black playing this opening? What compensation does he have for the pawn? And the answer to that question is really weaknesses brought about by white having played pawn to f4. It's also because black's got a pretty good hold in the centre, and it's going to be hard for this king to find somewhere sensible to go. You know, this rook's already on the g file, facing it. Well, none of these pieces are developed at the moment, obviously. So black's got a slight development advantage at the moment, and you know, it's going to take a long time before these pawns become a real threat to black, put it like that. So,
Colin, I just wondered what the engine says about this, because a bit like your initial summary, I would have just thought this is so strong for black, sorry, for white.
Yeah. Well, it's a popular line for white. When I was an e4 player, I played it, so I could get this sort of position for both colours. It's a very interesting question, actually. I remember looking at these variations, or trying to look at these variations with a computer at the time. And one thing is they were a lot weaker then, obviously, and computers were probably slower as well. But, you know, you still had some pretty strong computer engines around at the time, and they just hated black's position. I think it was typically just short of 2 pawns ahead, you know, +2 for white, something like that. Looking at these recently with modern engines, they are a lot less gung-ho for white. It's probably something like +0.6, +0.7.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it really is interesting. The computers hated the black position almost so much that they kind of made random moves, not in line with the position. You couldn't get much sensible analysis out of it, because they were always trying to grovel out into a hopeless ending. So it isn't obvious, and it's also quite striking that the strongest player, or one of the strongest players who contributed most to the theory of the variation, was Botvinnik, who was known as a sort of solid logician almost, you know, fixed pawn centres, but, you know, he was willing to play this position.
I think this came up in Spassky Korchnoi from the candidates. I think this exact position. I'll be very surprised.
It could well have done. As I say, this is really almost a starting position for.
This is a tabia position.
Yes,
very much so. Yeah.
You know, a very popular tabia position.
Yes.
Probably the tabia position for the Winawer.
I'd say so. Yeah. So
which means, just for those that don't know, it means a kind of starting point. So a lot of people will trot all the moves out, and the real game starts from this point.
Yeah, there are a couple of branches after Queen G4, I mean, and taking the pawn. There are a couple of other branches, but not very many. Put it like that. So it's White's go, isn't it? White's two most common moves. He's got the big choice to take the Queen or the Knight. He's also can play Rook B1, just waiting for Black to make up his mind and do something, if you like. Or even Rook G1, who's played in nowadays.
Rook G1, yes.
Yeah. Sort of. Anyway, Jim decided to stay with the Knight. Quite sensible. Threatening to come into D6, Knight B5, hitting the Queen, and then to D6. Wouldn't be at all pleasant from Black's point of view. So by far the most common move here is A6. To prevent the Knight coming in, but I chose Knight F5. Oops, I think I chose Knight F5.
You can get away with it. That's the move you want to play, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think that's the idea. So, and now
D6.
Knight B5 still hits the Queen, but it really doesn't do a lot. Black rather will waste time retreating, but then White will have to waste time when the Knight gets kicked away.
Because I played D4 here, I can't. Did that come?
Let me think.
I think he said something to the effect, because I play it, it looks good, but if anybody else, they'll think it's the fruit of, preparation, but it wasn't. I was just sort of trying something else. I know that sounds good.
After Knight takes pawn, you can certainly play it after Queen takes pawn.
Oh,
after Knight takes pawn, D4.
It's too clear cut, isn't it? Yeah, I don't think he did say it.
Yeah.
That looks wrong.
Yeah, it does here.
Yeah.
I don't think you can anyway. No.
I knew that really, Colin. I was just testing you.
Yeah. No. You've got to defend the D6 square, James.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the Knight comes in there.
Yes.
Yeah. So Rook B1. And now Knight D4. And I think that is the right move here. You might think, well, what the heck does that do?
What's the idea of Rook B1?
Rook's
What's thinking there?
Question?
Ties the Queen down.
You said helpfully. Yeah, it ties the Queen down. It also sets up silly tactics. So if Black decides to, not silly, I mean, he is putting a rook on an open file, let us say. So it's a sensible opening move. So let's say, I just want to show this because it's quite a common attack. Let's say Black decides to prevent the.
I was by no means implying I thought it was a poor move. I just wanted to understand.
No, sure. It isn't the only move there, Steve, by the way.
No.
Yeah, by any means. But let's say White does here and Black castles. How can anybody see the problem with that? How can White take advantage of what Black's played here? If you're looking up to take the Black side of the Winawer, you really should know this.
I think White can sack a big piece.
Oh, Queen takes A6.
Yeah.
Well, it's not much of a sack, is it? So pawn takes Queen, Bishop takes pawn check.
Exactly.
Now, because of the rook,
Yeah.
Queen B7 is the only move. Black's position's just collapsed basically. He's now 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 pawns down, and White's got all the compensation. So, obviously Black doesn't have to cast in that position. He'll play Knight A5 to C4, which is another common theme in this line. So anyway, so Rook B1, and I played Knight CD4. I think I was probably a bit more theoretical in those days than now. I think it is the theoretical move. What does it do? It stops Knight B5 for a start. So it's kind of got a defensive move, defensive purpose as well as aggressive one. It also hints at threatening C2. Obviously, the Queen's defending it at the moment, but if the Knight were to move anywhere, c2 would be on. And it opens the c file for rook c8 maybe. So, nice big knight in the middle of the board. It also prevents bishop e3 if white was thinking about doing that, because obviously you just take it and there's a nasty fork on c2. So anyway, knight c4, g3. One thing, sorry, I was going to say, this is a sort of compensation that black's got. The bishop can't move. It'd probably be a bad idea to put it there anyway, because obviously the g pawn's on breeze. So white solves that problem. And he also gives the bishop another couple of squares to go to. Black castles. So Mark, whose position would you prefer to have here? It's not a test, it's just a, an instinct, to say.
This time I'm going to just sit on the fence and say it's even. I still like the extra pawn idea and stuff for white and the pass pawn. I think your two knights are looking good now. Probably still go for white.
Okay, fair enough. And I think this is a theoretical position where white's probably adjudged to be slightly better. I think that's right. But what black's obviously got active play here, I'd say. And this, and again, this is a very thematic break that I played. I'm not 100% convinced it's correct in this position.
Oh,
but we're trying to nibble away at white's pawn. It's quite possible that black should put his rooks on h8 and g8 and try and just make it really difficult for white to make any progress. But anyway, f6 is an idea, and black's trying to get some squares for himself. Pawn takes pawn. In this particular position, black would like to follow it up with e5, but obviously, it just drops the d pawn with tempo if he does that here. So I just move the rook to try and take the pawn back. And Jim developed his bishop. You might think, why there? If he'd gone there, I guess I could harass them. No, I couldn't really, because he'd just taken d4. Not sure. Yeah, last Jim that. So bishop h3. I think it was probably playable.
You can't take on d4 because you've got knight f3 forking king and queen.
Not with his bishop on g2. Yeah. And it looks, if after I take the bishop with check, it looks like my knight can't escape anywhere. I just noticed. So maybe knight h4 wasn't playable. Yeah. So bishop there, rook takes pawn, and he decided to take the knight, which I think that's a concession, because this bishop, probably should have been on g2 to be fair, is is covering a lot of squares. Around the king side especially, all his pawns on dark squares, and without the bishop to cover them. But still, what white should have done was play g4 here, and it looks, start pushing the pawns. His king's not going to be safe anywhere really, or totally safe. So let's say knight h4. I did write down a variation. Rook f1. I guess just defending the pawn.
Why couldn't he take the knight then, or the queen?
In this line, Gordon.
There's a nasty fork.
Yeah, we've got knight f3 check. Yeah, so in many cases, black's position is hanging on these tactics. Yeah, and I wonder if Jim missed that initially when he played bishop h3. Not sure. Probably not actually. Thinking it, So yeah, he should have played g4. Knight there. Yeah, the knight's quite threatening there. So rook f1, and I think White's got good chances to play for an advantage here, to be honest. But it's still a bit of a mess, yeah. It's not like White can just play automatic moves and win.
Looks like you can play e5.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's
no,
he's still got
pawn
knight
would be
d5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what do I do here?
Good
Question. Probably just defend the knight.
Yeah, and the pawn.
Yeah, and the pawn. Maybe e5's coming. But yeah.
Mind you,
It's a
if,
mess,
that,
isn't it?
if
Yeah.
that knight moves, you've got bishop b5, haven't you? No, if the white
Yeah.
knight
Well,
moves,
I've got knight takes c2 check as well for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bishop b5 forks.
Oh, yeah. Steals the rook.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Both sides are walking a bit of a tightrope, really. Anyway, that's not what happened. As I say, he took the knight, I took back, and he played bishop e3. Probably quite rightly not worried about knight takes bishop, queen takes knight. I think this knight is at least as good a piece as the other one. So the game's pretty even still. You know, the game was even for most of it. And I played rook h6. Why did I do that? Well, get the rook off that square. And I'm really starting to put pressure against his pawns. So, you know, he's got an extra pawn over here, but he's going to have to stretch to defend them. Bishop f2, defending everything. Bishop c6. And I imagine I was probably feeling quite happy in this position because, you know, most of Black's pieces are on good squares now. You played h4. I imagine, I'm pretty sure the logic would be that after d4, yeah, he can put the knight on e4, but he probably just wanted to defend the h pawn. I played d4. Yeah.
Can he play knight e4?
Knight e4. Knight e4 was played.
Yeah,
knight
but I
e4.
think you can play knight d6.
Sorry. Oh, okay. It's check. Here.
Yeah, but then you just recapture with the queen and you've got the same threats.
Okay.
You look like busting his position open.
It's quite good now you mention it.
Yes.
Well, I either didn't see it. Actually, there's no point looking, is it? Knight takes, knight is forced, yeah?
Yeah, queen takes.
Queen takes.
And what does he do now?
Good question.
We're dominating the light squares.
Yeah.
And you actually want to give up that pawn on the e file anyway, don't you?
Very much so. So if well, he's got to move the rook, hasn't he? This looks really strong. This looks really strong. And the e5?
Yeah. It looks like a Dubov position.
Yeah. I mean,
Queen f5 check.
Oh, queen f5 check is possible. Though,
yeah, you've got to play this e pawn at the right time because obviously your d pawn's weak as well.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the problem. I know what you're saying, but supposing white plays rook d4 next, well, assuming I defend the d pawn with, I don't know, well, apart from e5, the only move to defend the d pawn is rook d8, yeah? And he can pile up again with rook b4. And remember, you know, imagine a load of pieces get swapped off. If he's left with these two pawns, it might be a grim ending for Black. So Black's got to be, you know, really has got to find a way of busting open the position and, I don't know, take advantage of the Black king, I guess. Yeah.
I quite like a6 as well.
In this position, and go for b5.
Yeah, because he can't play c4 because you take en passant.
Right. Okay. What I did play, I think a6 is a good move. I think what I did play was e5 here, and I think it's quite well timed now. I don't think he can. Well, if he moves the knight, the h1 rook is on prise, and I think I can allow that knight to be taken with check, and the king moves if that's an option. And I think that pawn takes pawn is a real threat here, because then the h-pawn drops. So
you're probably always going to have this knight d6 tactic, aren't you?
yeah, yes, indeed. Yeah, maybe even just moving the king away was an idea.
The thing about knight d6 is it threatens bishop b5 as well, doesn't it?
Well, he's got 2 pieces on it, so he can give up the rook for 2 minor pieces, perhaps, in that one.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. These are all ideas for black, though, I agree. Anyway, I played e5. Why did he do that? Okay, so he's threatening to take the knight, but I played e4. So I could have taken the rook. He's got queen takes knight check. Then he takes another pawn, and he's getting 1, 2, 3, or 2 pawns for the exchange. And those pawns in the ending look promising. So e4, and I think suddenly the tide has turned in black's favour, because those pawns are just going to continue marching. Queen up. That's my hope anyway.
Okay, massive.
Okay, he's hitting, so he's hitting the rook on g8. If he'd moved the queen elsewhere, I don't know, there say, then obviously e3 hits the rook and the bishop, and he loses a piece. Yeah. So queen c4, good move. Rook supports the pawn. And he played rook h3 here. As I recall, we were both in some time pressure here. This was an evening league game, and I don't know, we'd have been in time pressure in a complicated position like this. Rook h3 really wasn't necessary. I think he should have actually just taken the pawn, which allows me to take here. Then the rook moves somewhere, and I can take here. I don't know.
Could he just castle, Colin?
Sorry?
Could he just castle?
Oh, blimey, that's a thought. Instead, what, here?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a thought.
Still play e3, can't you?
You can still play e3, yeah.
And then the light squares.
Or maybe you can mate him on h1.
Exactly. That's what I mean. The light squares.
Let's mate white on h1.
Go for this.
Yeah. That's
no, he's got a bishop on it still. He's got a bishop on it.
Some sort of nonsense.
Yeah, I didn't think of castling. I don't know what I'd planned in the game, if anything. Yeah. That is
curious.
Oof. I just feel it shouldn't work, but I don't know. Actually, no. That's
probably
not
play queen e7, maybe.
Yeah, queen e7.
Queen e7, yeah, in this position, because it defends everything, doesn't it? You want to get rid of that knight and your queen onto e4. And you really have got threats. There might be a rook for knight sacrifice, you know, in the right position.
All sorts. I don't know what to say, really. It just looks wrong to me, but as I say, I can't see anything.
Queen e7, do you think?
Queen e7, yeah, it must be a good move, of course. And just be a bit better, I guess.
Yeah.
Possibly even threaten that pawn.
Bishop b4.
Bishop b4. Yeah, this knight here is. I was pointing at it. This knight here is very annoying because it's covering this square and stopping my queen getting in there. I don't know. Queen e7.
I think you can sack that h rook for it, though.
Yeah, it'd take a couple of moves to
then you would not
that.
be able to defend the light squares, all of them.
What about e2? No.
I just feel there ought to be something more, well, even better, let us say. But I can't see it.
Whose move is it here?
It's black to move.
Retribution will not be long in coming.
Okay, let's say
go on
e2, yeah.
Let's say e2.
Because
Knight takes pawn.
G3.
Yeah, yeah. Let's say we can do that, followed by rook takes pawn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Followed by rook H1.
Yeah, that should do it, shouldn't it?
rather loving it.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but yeah, yeah.
If you play rook
Nothing
F,
left.
if you play rook F3 there rather than rook F2, so if you
Sorry,
castle,
the bishop's on it.
yeah, but you just swap the queens off and take the bishop.
Oh, yeah, you got the knight on it as well. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you play E2, just play rook E3, rook F3.
Well, yeah. Can't you just
You could
take
take the rook with a bishop.
You'd have to whip it off, wouldn't you?
I think.
Well, otherwise that rook could become quite active.
Because it's probably worth giving the exchange to get rid of the light squared bishop, isn't it?
Most,
take it.
most unsatisfactory somehow.
Rook E6 maybe.
Rook D6.
Rook E6.
Oh, E3.
Knight
Sorry,
takes
E3. E3. Rook E3.
Well, rook takes rook, knight takes, queen takes pawn.
Yeah.
No. Well, let's say we do take it. Oops. And then knight takes bishop. So 1, 2, 3, 4. White's got one pawn for the exchange, but if he gets those pawns mobilised, they're pretty good ones.
Well, you might not if you put your knight on G4.
Maybe even rook B3. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting line. Very interesting line.
It would be very nerve-wracking to play that, I think, regardless of how good, bad, or indifferent it is.
Well, it'd be quite nerve-wracking for me as well. If I hadn't been expecting castles and you just come in castle, I think I'd have fallen off my chair. I don't know.
You just have to say, can you do that?
Yeah. Okay. Shall I cheat and put the computer on?
No.
Okay.
Why?
So that's settled then.
What are you trying to establish?
Well, after castles, I just feel there ought to be something more there. But,
well, let's just look at it for a couple of minutes.
But maybe there isn't. Maybe there isn't. Maybe an exchange isn't in an ending isn't that bad. Maybe those pawns aren't that mobile, but I don't know. Maybe they are.
Okay, but let's. So what?
Oh,
Does E2 and then following up with your knight into E3 get you anywhere?
Okay, so E2, rook F3 is the suggestion. The thing with knight E3 is you could take here, I think.
So knight takes C2?
Which is still horrendously complicated for everybody.
Bishop takes rook.
Oh, look.
What, sorry?
Bishop takes F3.
Yeah.
But that's the idea, is to sack the exchange.
Yeah, but
and then chuck the H and G pawns up.
What White's doing that rather than what White's going into an ending, an exchange down, but he's got 2 pawns for it here.
It's got 3 pass pawns.
Yeah, he's got 3 connected pass pawns. I've got 1 though. No, it's only 1 pawn. Oh, sorry, yeah, it was 2 pawns. Don't know. This will still be a game, obviously, on a club night. Between 2 evenly matched players, this is still a game. Yeah. So, I'm sorry, John, I can't.
No, go on then, turn it on.
Yeah.
Is rook G8 possible?
Yes, I think it is. Oops. Sorry, let's try and get this position.
Rook G8 is interesting.
Because we do want to get rid of that knight.
Queen takes rook.
Sorry, after E3, obviously.
Okay, well, it's
E3 is a definite first move.
Yeah, it likes that. So it's showing the evaluation here as minus 1.77. So not clearly winning, depending on the level of technique of who's got the advantage.
Better.
And now the obvious top move is King B8.
Yes, indeed. So, well, in other words, there's not a forced line.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it doesn't like E2, presumably because of the exchange stack that's mentioned. So yeah, still a game of chess really,
Mm.
where black's got the advantage, but you know, anything will happen in a time scramble, obviously. Okay. So I play Queen E7.
Is this the right position now, Colin?
No, it's completely wrong. Thank you for.
Well, I was going to let you go carry on for a while.
I was thinking, yeah, knight there, pawn there, queen there, hitting the rook there. Sorry, I went back too far. Rook h3. That's a mistake. Certainly, it's just putting it holds everything together in a sense. But and castles was probably the best choice.
Some coordination.
It's gone a bit passive now.
Everything's kind of gone wrong. Queen check. Good move, I think.
Yes.
Queen b4, queen d5. So white hasn't got any threats, and the black queen's going to come in, and that pawn's probably going to pass. Yeah, queen g2. The knight's defending the rook. You know, all his pieces are sort of yeah, but then his bishop drops, doesn't it? Yeah, queen g2 is a threat. So if he defends the bishop, I think it has gone for white now.
Queen g2 anyway.
Queen g2 anyway.
Yeah, there. Okay. And now you'll be very disappointed to hear that I missed a checkmate in 10.
It looks like bishop.
Well, I was about to say that, you know.
Yeah. So all feel free to point out the correct move. I think somebody was saying it.
Bishop e4.
Well, I was going to go bishop b5 actually.
There is a knight coming.
Oh yeah, you've got your knight on it.
Yeah,
it's still playable, I think.
Let's go bishop b5, Colin.
Bishop b5, and it's on prise.
Yes.
So the mate in 10 line. So we'll go queen takes bishop. I think this is a mate in 3 or 4 from memory, but go on.
Well, queen d2.
Yeah. King there, on the grounds it's the only legal move.
Right there.
Knight d6 maybe, but the mate, yeah.
The knight d6 wins the queen. And it's
I was looking for something better than that. I wanted to win the king.
Yeah.
Queen c3.
Well, queen c3 then. Yeah.
I can't remember how the line went, to be completely honest.
come on, we want our money back then. Come on.
Well, okay, it'll be the check's in the post. Queen check.
Queen c3 is mating.
I see the check on the board actually.
Rook d6.
Rook d6 is mate. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well done. So yeah, the mate in 10. Let me think. Check.
Read out the credits.
Sorry, the mate in 10.
And gold coins were dispensed immediately.
Actually starts with c4.
Golden shower.
Check, which is obviously completely ridiculous as well. So we don't need to look at that. So what I did play,
You missed that? How terrible.
I missed that. It is terrible. I played e2, which doesn't look that great at all, to be honest, but I played it. You play queen e1, and then either he resigned or his time ran out. I'm not totally sure.
Queen f3 check.
His knight. This knight is, yeah.
That knight's annoying.
That knight is extremely annoying.
But you can play bishop e4 check.
I can play bishop e4 check.
Because you got take back with the queen then.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I can do that. And if he moves, you know, whether or not he exchanges the bishop, I can take him c2 shortly afterwards. You know, this is, yeah, this is a winning position for black.
Queen c6.
Well, rook c6 probably.
Or rook c6. Yeah, the rook can come
Rook c6 check is probably better, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just driving his king towards the edge of the board now.
Bring all the pieces into the party.
So it is gone for white. I do apologise for missing that mate there.
Failing to miss bishop b5 is terrible.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Hang your head in shame.
So that was that game.
That was quite pretty complicated, wasn't it?
That's partly why I showed it. It was a very even game for a long way through, by the way.
How long was it theory for, Colin?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That certainly isn't theory. I suspect it was up till here.
But a lot of these Winawer lines don't start till move 30.
The thing is, it's quite hard to learn all this theory, and the evaluations do change. So you try and learn a toolkit. One of the things in the toolkit is F6.
Yeah.
As I say, quite possibly not the best move in this line. Another thing in the toolkit is just to bring your heavy pieces over to the king side and pressurize the white pawns. All the weaknesses there. Another thing is to try and get a knight there, which you don't do in this variation, but it's well placed there. Or even play king b8 and rook c8. Both players have got all of these ideas and ideas, and you try and match them to each other. Anyway, I spent a lot more on that game than I thought I would do. I do have another game.
Shall we have a little
a break? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Shall we have a 5-10 minute break?
Yeah.
So next game, we'll have a look at another fairly mainline one, if that's okay. So I'm back again. This time I'm playing a 21st century game, 2015. David Whitehead in one of the Sunningdale Easter Congresses. That's a Sean Hewitt one. I
sadly missed those tournaments.
Sadly missed.
Oh.
So again, we went down the main line, or the main queen g4 line. And another option Black has here. Is you can play it here, and you kind of decide to give up the d4 pawn rather than the c3 pawn. I think I've only played it once or twice. I don't know. I think this might be the line that Korchnoi popularised.
Yes, it was. I got it wrong. You're quite right. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So white takes, knight takes, queen takes knight, should d7. So it's obviously it's very similar position, the pawn structures and that, but a bit more simplified than in the last game. Rook g1, so he wants to develop his bishop, I assume, so he defends the g pawn. Gain the tempo on the queen, and queen c6. I think this was all theory, and I possibly knew it, but now my theory runs out, unfortunately, both then and now. Bishop d3. So the first question that Black has to think about is bishop takes knight, wrecking that pawn structure, a threat, or isn't it? What would you think?
It looks like one.
No.
But maybe it holds the g4 pawn back.
Yeah, it holds the g4 pawn back, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you get the e4 square.
Yeah.
I would say superficially it looks good, but it's not.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. But it doesn't mean it might become a threat in a little while, So, and it's obviously a good square to put the bishop on.
What Nimzovich said. Well, I'm not going to say it, because if you know what Nimzovich said, I don't say. The
threat is stronger than the execution. Is that what?
I think he said that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well,
so now I'll play queen a4.
That's what Marie Antoinette said.
What, queen a4?
The threat's stronger than the execution.
No, she said
well, she was. Well, I hope for her sake she was correct. I don't know if it was. So queen a4.
How much have you had to drink?
A couple of gallons.
I didn't realise she played
water.
Chess, so.
Nor did she.
I think the theoretical move here is queen d5, but I didn't know that. I decided during the game, as I remember, that putting my bishop on that diagonal, maybe on d5, was the way to go. So anyway, queen a4, not the correct move. Probably not a blunder, but not best. Rook b1, developing the rook. c6. And now white plays queen c5. Obviously, if my queen wasn't d5, it wouldn't be possible. And it quite often transpires that if the queen gets to c5, unmolested, let us say, where Black can't obviously kick it away, it's a very good square for the queen, and quite often gives White an advantage.
What happened?
So I played knight d4. I thought I'd hit the c2 pawn. So I'm just checking what happened. And sorry, there was a
Okay,
Rook b4.
b4.
rook b4 looks very strong, but I think yeah, sorry, rook b4 looks very strong.
Knight
Knight
c2 check.
Knight c2 check, bishop takes knight, queen takes, and I think black's doing fine here. But rook b4 is totally the right idea and is one of black's main threats. So what white did, he played a really good move here, and one of these moves, very awkward. He just got his king out of the check. So rook b4 is now a
Big threat.
big threat. Okay, I can take on a3, but then he'd obviously, well, sorry, he just wins the knight. So I need to defend the knight. So I thought, where shall I move the knight to? I suspect I've got to play rook d8 here or something horrible. I thought, let's take the pawn. So, question for you. What's white's best move here?
Good question.
Glad you appreciated it.
That's all right.
Ah, rook takes b7.
Well,
b7, Paul. Yes.
yeah.
I was hoping you'd take longer because that would make me feel better for missing it in the game.
No, rook takes b7 looks strong.
Rook takes b7 is crushing, I think, is the word.
Ouch. Seeing that.
Forget
Yeah.
what colour you are. Yeah, you-
Bishop takes rook, bishop b5 check is the point, winning the queen, and
Brilliant.
just other things as well. So that came as an extremely unpleasant surprise. So
Yeah, you got queen takes e4. Oh no, the bishop's on it, isn't it?
yeah, the bishop's on it.
Uh,
So
yeah.
my bishop and knight are kind of protected by the queen. I think this is just one gone position. So
Well, he's threatening mate on e7.
Yeah, mate is one.
yeah, he's threatening mate.
Queen e7.
Yeah. So I castled in a nonchalant manner. Well, probably not very nonchalant. I'll show the rest of the moves quite quickly. He took the pawn. Why not? Hit my queen.
Corporal Jones would have said that, wouldn't
And
he?
I've kind of, well, I can't do anything here. You hit my queen, I'll hit yours.
I castled in a
Queen b6,
nonchalant.
threatening checkmate, threatening my queen. Everything's gone horribly wrong. So yeah, so I'm queen for rook down now. Am I? Yes, I am. Queen for rook down. So the remaining moves were king there. You could have just played queen d3 check, picking up the knight there, incidentally. King there. But in this position, I graciously resigned. So I wouldn't like you to think that black always has it his own way in the French defence.
You get some quite hairy positions there.
Yeah, quite hairy position. This line, yeah, as John mentioned earlier, there is a lot of theory on the French Winawer. This particular line with the d4 idea is quite forcing. Sorry, let's go back to the right position for once. So d4 is a relatively forcing line in some ways, and black needed to know more theory of it. I should have played queen d5 and bishop c6, and black's got quite a solid position. But I played this and got punished. Queen c5 is already quite awkward for black, to be honest. Anyway, so that's not the day.
I noticed a move I'd like a look at after rook takes b7, Colin. I might be seeing things, but
Yeah, go on then.
if
So what did I do here? So rook there, knight there.
can you take
Took the pawn c2. Yeah.
what about knight e3 check?
Bishop takes.
Yeah, queen d1 check. Does that get anywhere?
Oh, okay. That's quite interesting you say that, Steve, because the computer thought king f2 was possibly even better than king f1. So, okay.
I just think Because if bishop takes, you got queen d1. My thinking was just as it kind of flashed up, was bishop takes e3, queen d1 check might get you somewhere, or if queen takes e3, then you can play bishop takes rook. So
okay. So what about this though? King f2.
Yeah.
And the
Just
queen.
don't forget there's a mate in one for white.
The queen's hanging as well.
that's amazing.
That's
Yeah, I didn't look at that to be honest, Steve.
You're running out of checks. So queen on
Yeah.
it.
I mean, you
Wait,
might
that's
try.
clear advantage.
What about rook takes pawn check before
See,
that?
the trouble is, I think even here you're getting checkmated, or you're just losing the bishop back, and that's enough. Yeah. I suspect
Colin,
it should be. Sorry.
Sorry, Colin, just go back a couple of moves, please.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So king f2.
Yep.
Rook takes pawn check.
Ooh, make use of that bishop. Yep. Well, rook takes rook, and on the grounds it's the only legal move.
Yeah. Queen f3.
Oh.
Are you getting anywhere? I'm just trying to get a perpetual.
That's so nice.
There you go. Oh no, it's not, mate, is it?
That's so nice.
Nearly.
You haven't got time.
Nearly.
The bishop's protected.
Yeah. Sorry. I thought it was leading to something.
Good try, but no cigar.
Well,
yeah.
Can we continue? That's interesting, isn't it?
Let's take the a pawn. Queen takes a7.
What about bishop a6? Ah, no, rook d1. Sorry.
Rook d1, yeah.
Good spot.
Yeah.
Queen takes a7. Can you play? Oh no, you've released the pin, haven't you?
I'll take the rook actually. Yeah. Just take the rook. Can we look at this line again then?
Queen e7 is mate though, isn't it?
What? Oh, well, bishop takes rook.
In this position.
Queen e7.
No, it's White's move, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's White's move here.
Yeah, White to play.
So Queen e7 is mate, isn't it?
No, he's not checking anymore. He's castled.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
So roll it back then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, White is a piece up here, remember, but can he actually keep it? I mean, both his rooks are attacked as it happens.
What about rook takes a7?
Okay.
That work.
It's a very good question.
We lose the bishop, but we've still got 3 pieces.
Or the rook. I'm going to take the, I'm tempted to take the bishop because if
rook d1.
You got rook check, of course. Crumbs, what a position.
This has gone crazy. Queen f8.
Well, rook back.
If you played rook g8 first, you could swap off and then mate, couldn't you?
Yeah, rook g1 must be the move.
Oh, you got a rook there.
Yeah, the rook can come down and check.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, that's killing.
Then you can swap off the black rook.
Yeah,
the queen in. That's mate, isn't it? Rook back, rook takes.
Well, rook a8 check.
Queen f1.
Haven't you got rook a8? Okay.
No, the bishop's still there.
Queen d6 check. Yeah.
Yeah, that's killing.
Okay, but okay then. So instead of rook takes bishop, how about queen takes rook? If you're going to checkmate me with that rook, I'm going to take it before you do that.
Now we'll bring our bishop in then. Bishop a6.
That's a point. That looks quite strong. And
yeah, it's going to be mate.
White's doing well. Oh,
no, queen's.
Yeah, sorry, the queen's still defending, isn't it? Which I'd missed.
Yeah, queen
takes rook. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, good spot then. Good spot.
Colin, in the line where you play rook g8 check and then rook back.
Yeah.
Doesn't that just hold? So because the queen and bishop combo is covering a8, and the bishop can go. So in this line castles.
Yeah.
Rook takes d3.
Yeah.
Then rook g8 check.
Yeah.
Rook d8.
Forced. Yeah.
Rook takes rook.
Yeah.
And you're just a rook down, aren't you? Sorry.
And it's Queen E7.
Well, I think Queen E7 is mate in 2, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Queen D6 for that matter. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Just
no
stupid.
problem.
Sorry.
That's all right. So, yeah. Anyway, that was that game. Are you up for another?
Oh yeah.
That was a lot to see over the board, though, to see if
Yeah.
we could repel that attack.
Yeah, true. Well, yeah, I mean, it was a big collapse. Yeah, well played by my opponent, obviously.
And when he played Rook B7, how did you react to that then?
Well, as I said, I castled nonchalantly.
Oh yeah, nonchalantly. That's right. Yeah.
I can't remember. I suspect that my level of nonchalance wasn't that high in that game.
Superficial nonchalance.
Okay. Yes, indeed. Okay. We'll do one more. What's happened there? Okay.
I don't know.
All right. What can I punish with you next? Let us try this one. So who's this? Again, an ancient game. My opponent was Colin from Purdon Chess Club, who'd, I think the previous year, we'd gone down a French Winawer main line, and he'd duffed me up. So this was my opportunity or challenge to get some revenge. So, So as before, Queen G4, and this time, instead of playing Queen C7 immediately, I decided to change the move order slightly and play pawn takes pawn. This was a move order, and it's a totally good way of playing. This was a move order that Ian Thompson used to beat me in a game at some point. So I like the idea of it and kept on playing. And White's best is probably to transpose back into the main line and just play Queen takes pawn, rook there, Queen takes pawn, Queen C7, and so on. Black probably doesn't have any way to exploit the move order and find an improvement. But White obviously thought, why not just straighten my pawns out and still threaten the G7 pawn?
Colin, I'm looking at this very old book here.
Oh, cool. That's John Watson, yeah.
Very basic book on the French from I don't know when, long time ago.
Yeah, early 90s, maybe even earlier.
1983.
Crikey, yeah.
And in this book, it tells me that C takes D move was played by Spassky versus Korchnoi in the candidates final 1977.
Wow.
This recapture has rarely been played.
Okay. It's a move order I use quite a few times, you know. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, because it looks like, if you can do it, why is it so rarely played? But I don't know if there's a good answer to that, or if it's just transpositional. That's Sean Talbot, is it, that book?
That's Sean Talbot, yeah.
Yeah, wow, okay. Excellent. Yeah. Member of, not very active member of Crowthorne Chess Club, put it like that. Yeah, I used to keep on trying to get him to turn out for matches, but...
Well, was he an IM?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, very strong one, I think, in his youth, and didn't play much after that. So, yeah, anyway, in this game, I played pawn takes pawn, and White reasoned, well, why not just straighten out my pawns? Got no weaknesses. Now, the thing is, though, here, Black's got Queen C7. Again, with this threat of check. So, White defends against the check. I'll just take the pawn anyway. Rook C1 isn't a major threat because the bishop's defended on C8. So we didn't play that. And also this queen.
King D1, by the way, instead of bishop D2, so you deviated.
Oh, okay. King D1, yeah. That's a move in the main line as well. I don't know what I play against that. Crikey.
Wasn't that Carl's move?
No, cancelled. Then played F6.
Right.
Anyway,
That makes
totally
sense.
different game, but just FYI.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, with the king, white king, you can quite happily cast from, as I say, F6 to get counterplay. Very interesting. Yeah, I think it's. Don't know how many club players would play King D1. It's the realm of the grandmasters. Anyway, Bishop D2, Queen takes pawn, and we play Queen takes G7, Rook G8. And now the difference is it's not like the main lines because the pawn's defended by the Black Queen. So Queen H6, still a game, obviously. I'm not claiming. I think Black's equalised, probably fairly easily, but I wouldn't certainly not claiming an advantage for Black. White defends the C pawn. Okay, what should Black play here?
Knight F5.
Knight F5. I might, in that case, I might be tempted to take here. And that knight's, well, it's sort of pinned.
Well, the rook's loose.
The rook's loose, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd have to play Rook G7 and then move the king up.
Well, then check, yeah.
Move the king to E7.
Presumably Bishop D7 is the right move, is it?
It's a move. There is a.
Oh, there's something better.
Yeah, a cleaner move. I think Bishop D7 is a good move.
What about the crushing Queen G6?
Yeah, chicken out.
No, that might be a good move actually, but I don't know.
Queen E4.
Queen E4 with the idea, knight takes D4. I suspect that white would have to grovel out with the queen swap in that case.
Okay.
I'm just trying to see what this works actually. So I've got notes here, but I'm not looking at them. No, fairly straightforward tactic.
Can you get away with knight takes D4?
Yes, Paul. I think it's the best move as well.
And then Queen G2.
Queen
G2.
Yeah, and then just fought the pieces.
Yeah. To get the piece back.
Yeah. So I think this sort of position is markedly different from the main line in many ways. I think my opponent was slightly disoriented by all of this. Anyway, you played Bishop B5 check, which is tempting, obviously, because it means white can castle and so on. It helps his development, but it helps Black's development as well.
Yeah, Bishop B7.
Doesn't look right to me, Bishop B5.
No. Very often in the French defence, Black is delighted to exchange these two pieces because White's bishop tends to be more dangerous than Black's bishop, at least for the first 30 moves or so.
What else did White have then?
Yeah, that's a good question. You're not supposed to ask questions like that, Paul, because I don't know the answer. What else did he have?
Rook C1, maybe?
Black is a pawn up at the moment. Maybe Rook C1 and just put up with being a pawn down, but it doesn't look that appetising, does it? It's either.
He hasn't got anything else, has he? Really?
Does he have anything like, I don't know, knight takes C6? No, because it's check, isn't it? Take the rook.
According to the computer, which I put on earlier, Rook C1, Queen takes knight, Queen E3 is equal. I mean, yeah, I know, it seems a little bit unlikely to me. I guess White is a bit more active here. He's got the C file and coming into Rook C7 maybe.
I was going to say Black can't coordinate the pieces very well though, can he? Because even after Bishop D7, how do you get... You can't castle.
And B6, Bishop B7 is King D7's just too slow, isn't it? So, yeah, maybe that's it. Just, White achieves equality with this.
He does have knight F5 still.
Yeah.
Like you say, it's who do you like in the ending?
Yeah, actually, that helps the knight to get to a good square somehow, doesn't it? Oh,
Yeah.
but the queen's on breeze, so probably ought to do it. Yeah, not sure. I'd take black here, to be honest, whatever the computer says. I think you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe bishop b5 check is certainly the most. Oops, sorry. Is the most human move, even if it's not objectively the best one. He castled. I took the piece. So you can see why he did it. And now he played rook b1, obviously hitting the b7 pawn. So the question again, what is black's best move here?
Yes.
And now we just need to deflect the queen. Rook g6.
Rook g6. I think the queen can probably go back to e3 there, or f4. f4 probably.
And also when he takes that b pawn, it's with check, isn't it?
Yeah.
How about rook g2?
G2. Is that Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, all spotted, Peter. Yeah, rook g2.
I shouted it. No one heard me.
Oh, did you, Steve? Sorry, didn't hear you.
Ah, yeah.
So very nasty. It's just suddenly almost come out of the blue. You know, it's rook b1 was a mistake. He had to play a grovelly move to defend against that. So king takes rook.
E4.
Check.
Oh.
King there.
Oh, I see.
King there. Check.
Right.
Bishop g5.
Mm-hmm.
The only vaguely sensible move, but check. King there. Rook takes bishop. And mate's unavoidable.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Queen F.
Queen takes g5, of course.
Sorry, you're quite right. You're quite right. Mate or huge loss of material is unavoidable. So queen takes rook is the only permanent way to avoid the mate. You know, you play rook takes pawn check first.
Yeah.
Also, but basically, it's gone. In fact, this did happen. So let's quickly go for the other moves. You know, his rooks. Fortunately, it's quite easy for me to get my king safe and get my pawn threatening. Oh, and in fact, I'll get to checkmate. So that was that game. Another, yeah, that was my revenge. He did duff me over in the previous year, it must be said.
Nice.
Okay.
Good game.
Mm.
Mm.
Okay, chaps. Well, I've kept you past cocoa time for a long time. I do have another game if you want, but I can appreciate if you got French Winawer overload.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Gives me a headache, it does.
Yeah, absolutely. So have I converted anybody to the French Winawer? To Tim's shaking his head vigorously.
I'll carry on with the Sicilian.
Depends how
Okay,
you
yeah.
know, so, isn't it?
I think I would have to spend far too long calculating tactics to go for all that stuff.
Yeah, okay. I mean, as I say, it does lead to tense, unbalanced positions. It also leads to a high number of decisive games. I think about a quarter of the games I have were draw in the French Winawer are draws. The others and others, you know, wins and losses, obviously. And that's probably quite a lot lower than my own personal number of draws. I tend to draw perhaps too high a proportion of my games. I don't know. But
a much higher proportion of drawn games in the Tarash, presumably.
And the advanced and the exchange.
Yeah, but I think that's fair. Yeah, that is fair. Yeah, you know, I think both players are up for it. Both white and black are sort of up for that sort of game, and they go down that line, obviously.
Does no one play the McCutcheon anymore?
Ooh, I think has there been a couple of books on that? When I say recently, I mean in the past 5 or 6 years. So the McCutcheon is this. So what is it? Bishop here, isn't it?
Yeah, Bishop G5, isn't it?
The thing is, are most white players playing this now?
Yes, yes.
I think that's the thing. So even if the McCutcheon is this variation of the classical French.
Yeah.
Very interesting line. I think I played it once or twice in my youth. But,
There is this ancient book on the McCutcheon.
is that one?
Tim Harding. Sorry, did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think advocated it. Might be advocated in this book, The Modern French.
Yeah.
Which is Mark Macready's favourite book, if I recall correctly.
He said with some irony.
Oh yeah, so, yeah. They go through the McCutcheon variation in some detail and recommend it. As I say, I think it is played in answer to the question, but
not very often.
Yeah, if you want to play it, you've also got to be willing to learn these lines as well. Yeah, which are perfectly playable for black, I have to say. You know, this book is based on around the classical French against Knight C3. It's a very good book, by the way. Where did I pick it up from?
It sounds to me that you'd like to review another book on the French, Colin.
No, well, well, as John knows, I have switched in recent years to the Caro-Kann, so perhaps I'm the wrong person to be proselytising the French defence. But when you get games like this, I do enjoy them. You know, whatever the result.
Did you change because you thought you could get better results with the Caro-Kann, or you just fancied a change?
The latter, really. I just fancied a change. I find that, you know, I have been playing the French for well, I've played other stuff as well, but for a long time. I do find that to keep fresh, if you like, it does help to change openings every now and again. I find I just trot out, you know, in the French defence, you just trot. I found I was just trotting out moves without regards to the actual position, you know. Place the rook on c8 on the open file, place d takes d4, you know, play f6 to try and break up the, you know, and as I say, I think you, or at least I, can get a bit stale doing that, and learning a new opening, you know.
You get to the point you sort of play f6 and think, oh, I'm boring myself here.
Well, sort of, yeah. Well, you're just not really thinking about why you're playing it. But if you learn a new opening, you sort of got the ideas fresh in your mind, and and it does help you learn more about chess as well, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks, Colin, for a very interesting evening.
Yeah, I think we ought to.
Yeah, thanks, Colin.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Well, thanks for coming over, mate.
Very good.